right, hello and welcome to Around the Horns, the show where we talk about anything and everything around the University of Texas baseball team. I am Aaron. I am here as always with my co-host Zach. Zach, it's been 5 games in 5 days. We're not catchers. We're not guys rolling out to shortstop every single day that really should be tired at the end of this stretch. But not gonna lie to you, man, I'm feeling it a little bit. I'm pretty tired at the end of this 5 day stretch. I've sent a lot of tweets. I've typed a lot of words. I did some driving back and forth. Just had a lot of thoughts going through the head. I'm on top of our other responsibilities that we both have going on. I'm a little gassed here. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'd be doing a lot better if the Horns had won on Tuesday night. But I feel like we're at the halfway point. We can see a finish line, and it starts to get exciting very, very quickly. Although I do like the fact that Ben Upton and Dimitri from the 11.7 podcast call this the doldrums of college baseball. We're week 8, week 9, where everyone was just like, man, it's been a stretch. All right, let's kind of drink some Gatorade, have a little fun and try to regroup and get to the end. So yeah, it's been a stretch.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. I'm starting to feel it a little bit, but we are recording this on Wednesday afternoon. Texas did, of course, just play 5 games in 5 days, going 3-2. Texas went 2-1 over the weekend at home against Kansas State. And then for the second year in a row, Texas split a double midweek series against Texas State, where the road team won both games once again. Zach, we are not going to recap inning by inning of all 5 games and what stood out to us pitch to pitch and break down every decision that was made. Instead, I just kind of want to open it up a little bit and say, over the course of the 5 games that we have watched since the last time we recorded, what stood out to you? What are some things that jumped out? And then we can just kind of go back and forth and just rip some things off right here.
Yeah, so I'm going to skip forward a little bit through the K-State series and go to Monday night. It's getting late. David Pierce decides to go to the bench and bring in some young guns and just switch things up a little bit, just change the narrative, change the dynamic. And lo and behold, Flores coming up with a big 2-run RBI to left field. That I feel like that could be the launching point for, the rest of the season for him. Kind of not the same that we saw from Dylan Campbell, but from a confidence perspective, he kind of feels like he belongs now, because that really did become the game winner there. So
yeah, that was a big swing. That was a nice moment for him. When you get into this, like you said, the middle part of the season where things really start to drag along, it's not easy for a guy like Flores, who just hasn't had that many consistent at-bats, to just hop right off the bench in a close game late in the game. I believe that hit came in the 7th or the 8th inning, in front of a, hostile crowd. Texas had taken out the crowd for most of the game, but it was a packed house with a lot of fans that just are not big Jalen Flores guys, I would presume. It was a big swing. It was a nice swing, typical Jalen Flores, just real, just a lot of power right off the bat, nice and easy swing. And yeah, that was nice to see. I think overall that Monday win was just a very solid win, coming off 3 games in 3 days against Kansas State. You roll into that place on the road, pick up a nice win. I'm going to go back to Friday, probably the most exciting or just weird game that we saw in this stretch. That comeback, Zach, it came out of nowhere. We're sitting up there in the press box. I may or may not have been putting the finishing touches on my Texas drops the Friday night opener to Kansas State article. And then, in the matter of, 48 seconds, I was just backspace. I mean, Texas went, and I'm gonna botch this now because I don't have it up, but I think it was single, double, triple sack fly to begin the 8th. Kansas State, they had the D3 lefty. We talked about it, man. Thump minus. It's real. I tried to warn everyone. It's a real thing that can make a difference. He was out there. He was being D3. He was being weird. He was being left-handed. And it worked for 7 innings and no more than 7 innings, because when they tried to run him back out there for the 8th to go through the order for a 4th time, Dylan Campbell said he was a little surprised by that decision. The top of the order just, they pounded him for 3 straight hits. They got him out of there. And then the reliever that came in couldn't get the job done. The momentum was so built up. But that was one of the crazier things I've seen over the past 2 years being on the beat. Just a game that was just cruising by. Didn't seem like Texas was going to put up much of a fight on offense. And then in the blink of an eye, just like Zane Morehouse was in for the save, and that was it. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, EK leading off of that bunt line single down the first baseline. You're thinking, okay, you've got the heart of the order coming up with DC and Powell and Garrett. And to DC's point, fourth time around, like, the guy's tendencies, you've gotten used to the motion. Even after DC's double, most coaches are going to be like, all right, let's go talk to the guy. Let's settle him down. Or look, let's go to the bullpen. Let's get this guy the hell out of there. If they're battling him up, no, another pitch, double. They're like, okay, they're going to go get him. Nope. Late, another pitch, double. You're like, okay, this is just getting insane. And then you get Porter Brown up there and hits a triple, and you're like, okay, are you going to get rid of him? Nope. Leave him in there for a sac fly. All right. Well, this guy is just, dead meat on the ground at this point. So
I think they've taken him out by the sac fly at least. I think he faced 3 batters, but I mean, he was in there for a long time.
Either way, I mean, they get a leadoff bunt single. I'm taking him out of the game if I'm the coach. So.
I agree. Yeah, I don't want him to face anyone with I don't want him to go through more people out of the stretch. He went over 120 pitches in the game. Hell of an effort by Bo Rama there, but just wasn't enough there. What was your second thing you had jotted down here?
Yeah, the Morehouse as a closer continues to be a little bit feast or famine. Not even game to game, but sometimes inning to inning, depending on if he's out of the stretch or not. It seems like he's just uncomfortable. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic, and I know being a closer is a very unique role in terms of you have to come in with a mentality that you're finishing the game. You are the brick wall that nothing can get past. And if something does happen, you can't dwell on it. Like it has to be gone from your mind immediately, or else it could really derail your entire season. I mean, we saw, I don't want to bring up old memories, but Aaron Nixon last year, he had 4 or 5 saves going into what really became just a complete failure of a year where he just completely just lost it. And I don't think we're going to see that from Morehouse, because he's a guy that David Pierce has said that has a rubber arm. He wants the ball every day. They in fact have to push him and be like, no, you need to sit down and rest. But he's a competitor, but just, you can't come in and walk a guy. And he's got some really good stuff, but that good stuff also can border on absolute disaster at times. And so, I think Texas fans have to acknowledge that there's going to be a game like K-State where it's not going to go his way every once in a while. So, yeah,
I mean, we saw it in that series. He was really good to close out the game Friday night. And then later in the series, not so much the same when they tried to extend him there a little bit. It's just tough. I think the biggest thing for him, and David Pierce said this after one of the games, he was talking about Morehouse and LBJ. Just got to land that breaking ball more consistently in the zone, because when he's going to that breaking ball right now, it is most of the time going to be in the dirt, trying to get a swing and a miss. But if that becomes a tendency, then hitters, when they see the spin, they're just going to lay off because they know, okay, this is a spinner. It's going to end up in the dirt because that's what the scouting report says. That's what we saw on film. That's what he's been doing. So at that point, you just start sitting fastball. And then, Zay Morehouse has a really good fastball, but when hitters are sitting on it, it's going to get hit. You work that in with some walks. Then, if that's the case, they're not going to chase those curveballs that he's trying to get them to chase in the dirt. So if he can land that pitch in the zone more often early in counts, or even, 2-1, be able to flip a slider in there for a strike, that would be big for him. But the stuff, I mean, out of the stretch, out of the windup, I personally have been talking about it for a very long time. It's not that like every time he goes into the stretch, it's bad. It's just sometimes when he's in the stretch, when he loses it, he has a hard time for whatever reason, then correcting it mid-outing. Sometimes he needs an inning to reset, and just as a closer, you don't have that luxury. So if you're struggling out of the stretch, you got to have some kind of like mechanism or thought or point there to be able to correct it right off the bat. And just that's something he's struggled with a little bit. But I think all in all, there's been some rough moments, but I think he's been a good closer overall. He's gotten the job done more often than not. And then he'll have plenty more opportunities as the year goes on. I want to talk about Sunday just a little bit, just from the point that Texas was gassed on pitching. David Pierce has talked a lot about, we just want to use our best, 5 or 6 arms to get us through these conference series and to get as many outs as possible. Well, he didn't have many of those arms available. Those core 5 or 6 arms. It was pretty much just Charlie Hurley from the guys that he really likes to go to on Sunday. And Hurley was pretty solid, but the bats really stepped up when they needed to. So I just thought it was really good to see the hitters come out there and get a win just with the offense by itself, on a day where, there was a lot of pressure on Charlie Hurley and on the pitching staff. So for the offense to be able to go out there, give them a big lead and kind of make it to where it wasn't a nail biter at the end of the game, I thought that was pretty important there in the finale.
Yeah, for sure. And touching on Charlie and the entire pitching staff in general, I mean, they had their moments, but I thought they held the runners in check better than I thought they were. Kansas State didn't run as much as I expected coming in the game. Yep. And, K-State was known for having that late inning winning ability, right? If you look at all their numbers, if you look at the stats, Friday night, they blow it. Now they come back and win it on Saturday. But yeah, to your point, Texas put it out of reach and really was never really troubled on Sunday, which was great to see. They needed that nice kind of feel good win. All right, let's recover, wake up tomorrow morning, and we travel down. So
yeah, no, I mean, it was good to see. You want to talk a little bit about EK? You got him jotted down here. I guess we should mention. I should mention on that Sunday game. Another thing that happened: David Pierce and Eric Kennedy both got tossed within a matter of minutes. So not often in college baseball do you see a player and a coach get ejected within like 10 minutes of each other for different issues. But yeah, I mean that the home plate umpire was having a rough day, so that was not too surprising.
Yeah, the home plate umpire was he was having not only a rough day at the plate, he was just having a rough day in life. I think he wasn't having it. He was not ready to be on Easter Sunday. Pierce gets tossed. Everyone, of course, is making the jokes like, "Hey, he must have had brunch with the old lady reserved." Like he was like he had to get out of there at a certain time. I do like the fact that he was sticking up for his guys, right? Like Daly was legitimately like everyone was worried that he was injured. He's getting checked out by the trainer. Like the home plate umpire, he doesn't need to be speeding up the pace of play at that point. Did Pierce go a little far? Maybe, but at the same time, it really fired up his guys. They came out and like started knocking the ball around. So there's that double-edged sword, right? On the EK thing, yeah, I mean, you just can't turn around to the umpire and say no effing shot. Love the fire. He's a 6-year senior. Some joked, of course, that he was an old man. He needed a day off. He didn't want to travel to San Marcos. But yeah, the reason I brought up EK was because of the struggles he's had in conference. Leading up to conference, he was on an absolute heater. And maybe this is actually a little bit of a good thing. We always talk about the hot, cold, hot scenario. Maybe this is his cold phase, and then he'll enter that hot phase and run it through the rest. But he just hasn't looked as comfortable at the plate and maybe it's the pitching, maybe it's the, you've got a lot of games and a lot of days. You start wearing down on your ability to stay intact in the way that you approach. But he just hasn't been great at the plate, which was not necessarily the best news for the Horns when they really look on him to get things going and get DC then up with men on base and Powell with men on base. So something to watch for going forward.
Yeah, it'd definitely be nice to see him have a big weekend in Waco against Baylor. I'm not overly concerned. He's still as, even if you've been a college baseball player for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Austin Todd years, you'll still have ups and downs. Like no one's immune to some cold streaks unless you're just a crazy like number 1 overall pick guy. But there's going to be ups and downs. It's a long season. I have not lost much faith in EK. One thing I did want to point out about the other side of the batting order, the bottom of the order, it had been tough for pretty much most of the season, 7, 8, 9. There've been a lot of quick innings down there, but there have been a lot of good at-bats recently. I want to point out Jared Thomas and Mitchell Daly. Thomas, he was a guy we know he has power as a big left-handed kid, and he just been going up there. He looked a little passive, not that confident when he was swinging. He wasn't swinging with a ton of power, a lot of pop. That's changed recently. I thought, his bat speed has picked up quite a bit. He's just been taking more aggressive swings. And I just think that has a lot to do with confidence. As you're a freshman, you're getting thrown into the fire, and then you look up now that you've had, a bunch of at-bats, you're just naturally going to start to feel more confident, be able to put some, bigger swings on balls. And I think that has helped him a lot. And then Mitch Daly, man, they haven't all fallen for hits, but he's had some loud outs lately. We saw on Tuesday night, he had a home run and he had a double in the loss. Both of those were really nice swings. pulled to left field there. So he's looking a little more comfortable at the plate, which is always good to see there at the bottom of the order. And then he's also been playing a lot better at shortstop. He had the issues throwing earlier in the year. I feel a lot better every time a ball is hit to him now that he's just going to make a solid throw over there to Jared Thomas. He's shown off the range a couple of times. So I think he's been, the just nice, solid shortstop that Texas has needed over the past couple of weeks. And he's also starting to look better at the plate. So those are just two guys there that, I feel like they might be starting to turn a little bit of a corner, which would help the lineup out a lot because top of the lineup is pretty good. The middle of the lineup is really good. So if the bottom of the lineup can have guys like Thomas and Daly start to put together good at-bats, provide a little bit more juice, I think that would be big. And it's something we potentially might be seeing.
Yeah, you talk about Jared Thomas. He's the guy that Pierce talked about earlier, well, a couple weeks ago. They had to correct some hip motion. His lower half was out of sync, and he said he was swinging a wet noodle. He just wasn't quite getting through it, which was causing him to just roll over him and chop him to the second baseman, which is what you saw a lot out of Thomas. It wasn't that he was striking out. He's just chopping a lot of balls on the ground to second base. And now you're seeing more fluid movement, and he's cutting it through the middle of the field. And, he's definitely got one of those frames and one of those swings that you could see him adding 10 pounds of muscle, and all of a sudden he's mashing home runs out to right field. So I think it's all there. It's just, again, these guys are freshmen they're going through the grind that they did not experience in high school by any means. And, his defense at first base has been stellar, early in the season, maybe one or two blips, but really, really good. And then, on Daly, I think it says a lot when you look at the splits overall versus fielding and conference. Texas as a unit overall is 978 defensively on the year. Not bad. That's below Texas standards, but it's within the realm of acceptable. You look at them in conference, they're fielding 994, which is exceptional, right? Like that's pretty much perfection. And a lot of that is due to the fact that Daly has become, as you said, more comfortable throwing the ball. It seems like the motion has come back in. He's feeling more comfortable to range out. He made a really, really nice throw deep in the hole.
Yeah.
Tuesday night at the dish. I mean, I was honestly surprised he got it. It wasn't a hard throw. It was just, he got the ball and he got it out of his hands quickly. He wasn't doing the double clutch or triple clutch. It was just no thinking, grab the ball, throw it over. So that to me, that feels really big because Texas, I think a lot of people had some defensive concerns, not just on Daly, but in general, overall, had some defensive concerns at the beginning of the season. So,
yeah, no, I mean, it all starts there with the shortstop, and that's definitely been a big key to the turnaround has been the defense overall. Anything else you want to hit on over the past 5 days before we talk some Big 12?
Yeah, so I had two more. First, just a very quick note, that freshman from Texas State, Chase Mora. I mean, I knew he had hit 4 home runs in a single game. He's got 12 on the year. That dude, he's the real deal. I mean, he'll swing and miss. He's a freshman, but for a smaller stature, he's like 6 foot. That dude's got some pop. If he was on my team, I would not be disappointed. And then the other thing I wanted to point on was, props to Kobe Minchie and Ace Whitehead. Ace Whitehead didn't throw it all last year, or maybe he threw an inning at most. Ace comes out on Tuesday night, goes 4 innings. Kobe Minchie goes 3 innings, doesn't give up a run, gives up 3 hits or 4 hits, but he felt like he was in danger, but never, it really came to fruition. He was able to get out of it. That's got to be a huge confidence builder for both of them because Whitehead's really stabilized that kind of Tuesday night pitching role, or if he can eat 3-4 innings, they have the arms to get through it. So, props to those guys, especially Kobe being a freshman and not used to the college atmosphere. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like both of those guys, the main thing there is they both just went out and they competed. You could tell they were locked in. They were giving their team a chance to win. And that's all you can ask, in a tough midweek series when the rest of the pitching staff is pretty tired. So for both of those guys to just go out there, compete, have a little bit of an edge. They both kept the team in the game for a little while. It worked out on Monday, didn't work out on Tuesday. It's kind of just how it goes. Yep. So I agree with that point. I want to talk a little bit about the Big 12 as we move into the middle part of the schedule, like you talked about. Just to give a quick overlook at the standings, we do have Texas at the top, sitting at 6-3 in conference play. TCU is in second at 7-5, tied with Oklahoma State, also at 7-5. Kansas is next, surprisingly, at 5-4. Then you have West Virginia sitting at 3-3. They have only played 6 conference games. You have Kansas State now at 6-6 after dropping 2 of 3 to Texas. Texas Tech coming in at 7. They've been struggling a little bit ever since that sweep at Texas really hurt them. So they're at 4-5. Then you have Baylor at 4-8, and at the bottom, hate to see it, Oklahoma 3-6. I want to talk a little bit about just these standings right now. I know we've talked in the past about that 16, 17 win number kind of being the key and the usual in the Big 12. I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the teams that have, the remaining schedules that are left and how many wins we could see each of those teams getting to, what kind of might be the critical series. What are your big thoughts overall on anything I just threw out there, remaining games that some of these teams have left? We can just kind of go back and forth here and just talk about what we think might happen here the rest of the way in a very unpredictable conference.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing right there is it's unpredictable, right? You've seen people get swept that had no business being swept, and you've seen people win series that, are shocking, or even, I would even call Texas sweeping Texas Tech a shock. Like that just does not happen, right? So if you look at the remaining games for Texas, let's start there. They have Abilene Christian at home. They have Oklahoma for 3, Texas Southern, UT Arlington, San Jose State, and then West Virginia. Nothing about that screams, oh my gosh, the world is going to come crumbling on our heads, right? OU is, again, at the bottom of the standings at 3-6, and they're 18-6 overall. Now, they've played some good games. They took 2 of 4, I should say, against Stanford. But overall, they haven't been very good. Hitting wise, their power numbers are all way down. Pitching wise, they haven't been great. And then you look at San Jose State and West Virginia, and you think, West Virginia was looking really good, and this past weekend, they look not so good. So they lost the series. Well, what is the rule of West Virginia? I don't think we know yet. They've only played 6 conference games total. And so to me, the real schedule for Texas remains the away games. And they only have 3 conference series away, and that's it. No non-conference. So 3 at Baylor, 3 at TCU, and 3 at Kansas. If you put all these together, if you're able to come away with a sweep at Baylor and or Kansas, all you have to do is avoid getting swept at TCU, and you're probably putting yourself in either the first, second, or third position overall in the conference. I mean, granted, you have to win series, but it really comes down to that. If you look at the remaining schedules, like how tough they are, Oklahoma State by far has the easiest. They've played all the tough people, and they only have West Virginia, Kansas, K-State, and Oklahoma. Now, one of those is a big rival in Oklahoma that has the ability to beat them in the Bedlam, but, it's hard to see them not being 17-7, 16-8 at the end of the season. Then you look at Texas Tech. Texas Tech has Oklahoma, Baylor, K-State, West Virginia, and Kansas. What really hurts Texas Tech is that sweep to Texas. That really could cost them the chance at the title at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I could see them very easily going through the rest and getting a sweep here and there, especially like Baylor or Kansas, because they get them at home and they're really, really good at home. But Texas Tech doesn't always play great away from home. They could go to West Virginia and lose a series, or they could go to Oklahoma. So, I think there's some play there, but I could see Texas Tech somewhere in the 16-8 range as well. Then you look at TCU, they got the third hard or easiest remaining schedule because they've played everyone big except for Texas. The other thing is they've played most of the teams. So they got West Virginia away, they got Texas at home, thankfully for them, and then it's Baylor and K-State. It's not hard to envision TCU being in that 15-9 to 16-8. I mean, they've had some issues and struggles here and there, but they're playing much better ball as of late. And then you look at Texas. And as we said, Texas, they very well could be anywhere between 17-7 and all the way down to 4-10. They struggle against West Virginia or struggle on the road against TCU. But I really think that this is going to be a really close race that comes down to the last weekend based on, all the schedules and where they line up at this point. So.
Yeah, I agree. I went through the same exercise. I laid out what everyone has left, and I kind of just went through and predicted each series and added up those wins. I do think it comes down to Texas, TCU, and Oklahoma State, those 3 best teams. You talk a little bit about Texas Tech. They're at 4-5 right now. When I went through and mapped it all out, I had them coming out at 13 or 14 wins, which I is not going to be enough. It'll be, 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
So I don't think they can make a little bit of a charge, but I don't think they can get to the top there. I think 10 wins is realistic. That would put them at 16 overall. So the big thing is you've got at Baylor, you've got at Kansas. I think 5-1 is going to be pretty. If you go 5-1 there, you're going to be in a pretty good spot, the way I looked at it, because then you can, take 2 out of 3 at home against Oklahoma. You can take 2 out of 3 at home against West Virginia, where Texas has played a lot better at home. And then that leaves you a little wiggle room to potentially go 1-2 at TCU and still be okay. TCU, I had with 8 or 9 wins left on their schedule, which would put them at 15 or 16. And then same thing for Oklahoma State. I had them with 8 wins the rest of the way against West Virginia, Kansas State, OU. I could see 8 or 9 there from them, which puts them at 15 or 16. It's going to be tight, man. That TCU series will obviously feel big, but when I look at it right now, I feel like if Texas can pull out 5-1 at Baylor, at Kansas, then they're going to be in a pretty good spot, assuming they can continue to play pretty well at the dish. A lot of this will change. We should mention David Shaw. He has not pitched since Stillwater. David Pierce said that he is just dealing with tenderness. Didn't elaborate too much on that, but we haven't seen him since. Don't know when we're going to get him back. That's been a really big piece. We've got Tanner Witt in about 2 weeks is what it sounds like. We don't know the role. It'll definitely be a small. He will be on a strict pitch count. You can't expect too much from him, but you can expect something from him on the mound here in a couple of weeks. So got to see how all that shakes up the pitching staff. But yeah, man, it's going to be a fun race. I do think it will come down to Texas, TCU, Oklahoma State. Obviously, the Texas TCU series will have a lot to do, but if Texas can just beat the teams that they are supposed to beat, even on the road, I think Texas is still, I think they're in the driver's seat right now, just looking at what they have left and where they play certain teams. But yeah, it's going to be fun. And of course, we try to predict the most unpredictable conference in the country. So check back on us when we're redoing this segment completely in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. And then a quick look at the RPI and strength of schedule for Texas. It's RPI is 18 and then strength of schedule is 12. They're right there. I think the biggest hindrance for Texas going forward is the only 2 RPI teams that really move the needle is TCU and West Virginia. They come in the mid 30s and mid 40s. So Texas really needs to be strong at home. They really need to be strong on the road as well. I mean, that, like I said, you mentioned it, TCU is going to be the ultimate series. But I feel like we very well could be on the last weekend of the season. TCU's away at K-State, hoping on some purple on purple madness, hoping that Oklahoma can put some bedlam on Oklahoma State while Texas takes care of West Virginia at home. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, the RPI strength of schedule stuff is going to be interesting. I feel like we're thinking about that from a hosting a regional type of perspective. And I feel like that's going to come down to pretty much winning the Big 12, coming in first or second in the Big 12 regular season, because regardless of how the RPI and strength of schedule ultimately shakes out, if Texas wins the Big 12 regular season, has a decent showing at the conference tournament, and is the University of Texas, has a perfect facility to host a regional, I have a hard time imagining them not getting a host spot if they are Big 12 regular season champs. So I feel like that's going to play a big part. But of course, like we said, that will all be very impacted by what happens this weekend in Baylor. Zach, you want to talk a little bit about the Baylor Bears here quickly before we hit on some around the country stuff and get out of here?
Yeah, for sure. So Texas travels up to Waco. They're going to take on the Bears. New coach, new staff, a lot of turnover. They lost a lot of their offensive weapons from last year. They're 12-21 on the season. They're 4-8 in conference. I would say, if nothing else, their conference play has actually been pretty spectacular compared to what they've done non-conference wise. They got swept by Oklahoma State, but they did get a series win against both K-State and against Oklahoma. And I personally see those as both somewhat surprises, because I would have not picked them to win either one. But at the same time, they got swept by Kansas. So it's really hard to figure out where they're coming, where they're going. And when I started looking into it, I think I figured out what's the issue. This is a sub 500 team, obviously. They're 12-11 at home, but they sport in 0-10 on the road record.
Nice.
Not a single win on the road. So, I start looking at that and I'm thinking, wow, they've got Texas Tech on the road. They've got TCU on the road. Ouch. Like they're in for some pain coming in the second half of the season. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. They've got an RPI of 211. Their strength of schedule 71. Just some random notes. They're after 6. This is really vital for Texas. Get the early lead, because after 6, when they're trailing, they're 1-15. When the opposing team scores, or when Baylor scores 0 to 5 runs, Baylor's 1-18 on the season. They're last in the Big 12 in batting average. They're last in the Big 12 in ERA, and they're 6th out of 9 in fielding. It's a team that doesn't have a lot of power. They're second in strikeout rate to Oklahoma State, surprisingly. And they've issued the most walks. So you start putting all these pieces together, and it doesn't look very good for them on the road, or I should say even at home against a team like Texas. But they're 12-10 and they're 12-11 at home. I don't know. Maybe they go 500. So, but then the Horns do have a 253-112 overall series record. So it hasn't been exactly a one-sided affair, but it's been about as close as you could come. Do you want to talk about their pitching rotation for the weekend?
Yeah, man. I mean, you pointed that 211 RPI. You can't show up with a 211 RPI and you got to have some pride, man. That is just brutal. Yeah, pitching wise, you talked about it. It's a lot of walks. I went through the stats this morning. They've had a rough go of it. On Friday, they're probably going to roll out the 5th-year senior Blake Helton. He is a righty. He's got a 7.61 ERA. He's just been getting hit pretty hard consistently all year long. It's hard not to feel good about that Friday game when you've got a guy that walks a lot of people with a 7.61 ERA on the mound against Lucas Gordon, and a Texas bullpen that will finally get some rest here after the tough stretch. You look at Saturday, another right-handed pitcher, Mason Marriott. He's got a 7.97 ERA in 35 innings. He's been very up and down his last 4 starts. He's had a couple good outings, but I think he had 12 earned against Oklahoma State. They just left him out there to die, man. That is just never cool. He's got a bit of a walk issue, that's for sure. He doesn't go very deep into games. You would think Texas would be able to hit him around a little bit like a team like Oklahoma State did. And then Sunday, another righty. So I feel like that is a storyline in itself. Texas has got 3 right-handed pitchers we project on the mound this weekend. He's got the best stats. He's got a 3.31 ERA in just 16 innings. This guy does not go deep into games at all. He went 5 last weekend against Oklahoma, but before that, he'd been working 2 to 3 innings every single time out. He's a little taller. He's 6'6". He is coming off a decent start against OU, so we will see what he has in Waco on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, Sunday it'll be a bullpen game like it kind of usually is, and it's just this would be a good weekend for the Bats to just kind of make a statement. You pad stats, you just take the pressure off the pitchers and give everyone a big lead to work with, because the Texas offense it's just a clear matchup advantage over the Baylor pitchers, and you would just like to see them take advantage of that, even if it is on the road.
Yeah, I think having a lineup projected of right-handed pitchers that could be very interesting. Yeah, those ERAs have not been great. Rigney, the projected Sunday starter, he didn't start the year as one of the starters. Actually,
Yep.
Cam Cauley did, and he has not been great. So it's interesting. I mean, even if you look at the guys that are rolling out of the pen, Needham, Oliver, Gullum, Stasio, Calder, and Cauley, all of their ERAs are 3.45 and above. So, pitching could be a very big issue for Baylor this weekend. Apparently, watching some of the highlights of the Oklahoma series, which they just won, it was behind pitching and defense, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Oklahoma's also at the bottom of the Big 12, and they're barely 500 on the year. So that could very well just be a case of 2 bad teams. The worst team got lucky at home. It is what it is. But it's hard for me to see them putting a ton of pressure on the Texas offense this weekend. And then from an offensive perspective, you look at their hitters. The leading hitter is Colby Brand. He's a true freshman. Then you got a junior who's a transfer, Cole Posey. They have a transfer from TCU, Hunter Teplansky, and then Hunter Simmons. And, this is a team, again, that doesn't have a lot of power. They don't really steal a lot. If you listen to Coach, it's all about a blue collar effort. So it's about putting a single in, bunting him over, putting a single in, trying to drive him home. And so I just don't know that that's going to work very well against a Texas defense that plays solid defense. When you see Texas get in trouble, it's when teams try to put pressure on the base pass, motion, putting pressure on the Texas pitching to try and throw them off kilter. So it just doesn't stand out to me as like, ooh, yeah, they're going to put a lot of pressure and they're going to be able to win. So,
Yeah, I agree. It'll be important for Texas, as always, to be aggressive on the mound. I am just a little concerned. I wouldn't be surprised to see Baylor put up some runs in a few of these games, because they do have some guys that can swing it a little bit. And the state of the Texas pitching staff, it's not at its peak right now. We're struggling a little bit without David Shaw. Maybe he'll be available. We don't have anything official on that, but I kind of doubt it. Then we've got LBJ. He's been struggling a little bit, so that gives me some pause. I went back and forth. We'll move into predictions now. I was going back and forth between 2-1, 3-0, pretty much up until we started recording. The David Shaw stuff freaks me out, but I look at the Baylor pitching staff and just think Texas can mash its way to 8 or 9 runs every single game. So I am going to give Texas a sweep, and I think that will put Texas in a very good position going forward if they do, in fact, get the sweep this weekend.
Yeah, I looked at the Baylor lineup, the Baylor rotation against what they did against Kansas, where they got swept. Put that up against a K-State and Oklahoma series where they won, and then put that up against, was it TCU or Oklahoma State? Oklahoma State it was. I'm going to go 3-0. I mean, it's obviously very possible for Texas to drop a Sunday game. I just don't see them dropping the Lucas Gordon Friday night, even the Staley Saturday night. Like, it would come down to a Sunday game where Baylor is able to stick it into the end and, gets a bloop home run or something like that. So, I'm going to go 3-0 as well on the weekend.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be a big boost if it does happen. Around the Big 12, not really marquee matchups this weekend, but everything is important. We've got Oklahoma State facing off against West Virginia. I think it would be wise for Texas fans to root for West Virginia in that matchup. I think that would be better long-term standings wise. We've got Texas Tech at Oklahoma, Kansas State at Kansas, and then TCU really challenging themselves in the non-conference against UNC Wilmington. Zach, which of those series stands out to you, and what are you looking for there?
Yeah, West Virginia, if it was in West Virginia, I'd feel a little more comfortable. At the same time, West Virginia just lost at home. So, and who did they lose to? They just lost to Kansas at home. Maybe Kansas is better than I thought. Yeah. I think Oklahoma having Texas Tech at home bodes better for them than having to go to Lubbock. Maybe Oklahoma is able to sneak out a win. That'd be really nice of Skip Johnson to help out his old former Longhorns. But, Texas Tech's going to ride in with a lot of momentum coming off a 1-1 series against Stanford in the midweek. So we'll see there. And then series to watch around college baseball. Number 1 LSU took on number 6 South Carolina. The week before that, it was Tennessee. Well, this week they get number 12 Kentucky. No easy day in the SEC. A series that I'm really interested to watch is Wake Forest, who's number 2 versus number 10 Louisville. Louisville's had some struggles, but then they've also been hot. They swept Boston College, who was number 9. That could be interesting. We talked about South Carolina. They're still number 6. Now they're playing number 4 Vanderbilt after having just played number 1 LSU. And if you go rewatch them, I think they outplayed them for 16 of the 18 innings. Arkansas plays Tennessee. That's another huge matchup. North Carolina is playing unranked Miami. Miami sweeps Florida State, gets ranked, and immediately drops out of the top 25 after getting beat. So maybe the Hurricanes can put some pain on old North Carolina. And then your non-Power 5, Coastal Carolina and Old Dominion. That should be an interesting and fun matchup. Old Dominion's got a solid team. They can hit. Coastal Carolina's been really good, and they're never out of a game. If you haven't seen them hit the ball, go watch them, because they can score 9 in an inning in a blink. It's quite crazy. So,
Yeah, the one that stands out to me there is definitely Vanderbilt, South Carolina. Man, South Carolina, those guys can mash. I mean, they
Yeah.
were hitting homers off of Paul Skeens. They were just matching LSU blow for blow, like you talked about. And then Vanderbilt, I mean, LSU was stuck at number one all year long, but Vanderbilt has just been so rock solid pretty much all year, just winning series after series, going up against tough opponents. I picked Tennessee to win it all at the beginning of the season. If I can make a little mid-season change, I think I would probably be leaning Vanderbilt. We'll see how that goes, but I've been really impressed with Vandy all year, and that South Carolina series will be a really fun test. So I will definitely be tuned into that one as we watch Texas and Baylor throughout the weekend. But yeah, Zach, I mean, look, I'm not going to beat around the bush. It has been 5 games in 5 days. It's been a lot of fun talking about all these games, breaking it down. It'll be fun to watch Texas potentially beat up on a Baylor pitching staff that has struggled. We will see how that goes. It's college baseball. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the Orange Bloods YouTube channel. Football, I believe there is a scrimmage that is rather important taking place over the weekend. We got the spring game. So, of course, check that out. There is a Orange Bloods happy hour taking place at Pint House Brewing. So there's been stuff about that on Orange Bloods. That will be happening on Friday. So you can go meet up with some of the guys there. That will be a lot of fun. Follow us on Twitter at Aaron Little OB, at Zach at the Dish. Zach, you have anything else before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited to get some electric jellyfish, to watch some college baseball after a couple days rest and napping. And yeah, looking forward to, the entering the grind of the middle of the season and what's ahead. So
Yep. Nope. We just got to bring our A game. Just keep showing up to the press box every single day. Giving ourselves a chance to win. That's all we can do.
that's all you can do.
All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the show, and we will see everyone next week.
Subscribe to the channel. Do it now.